It's been called the greatest film never to win Best Picture, a movie that bombed at the box office but found immortality through word of mouth and cable television. A story so deeply layered that even after dozens of viewings, fans are still discovering new details. The Shawshank Redemption. For millions of movie lovers, this tale of hope, friendship, and redemption ranks as one of the greatest films ever made. But what if I told you that beneath its familiar surface lies a world of secrets that even the most dedicated fans have never uncovered? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on Shawshank's most closely guarded mysteries, revelations straight from the cast and crew who brought this beloved story to life. The hidden meanings, the on-set tensions, the symbolic details placed throughout the film that completely transform how you understand Andy Dufresne's journey. These aren't casual trivia facts. These are the profound insights that the actors themselves have revealed over the years, revelations that unlock entirely new ways of seeing a film you thought you knew by heart. From Morgan Freeman's surprising confessions about his iconic character Red, to Tim Robbins' secret techniques that brought Andy Dufresne to life, to the deleted scenes that would have given the film an entirely different meaning, this is the untold story of Shawshank. And I promise you this, by the time we're done, you'll never see the Shawshank Redemption the same way again. The film that almost wasn't. Before we dive into the cast's revelations, we need to understand something remarkable. The Shawshank Redemption almost never made it to theaters at all. When Frank Darabont first approached Stephen King about adapting his novella Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, King was skeptical. Not because he doubted Darabont's talent, but because the story seemed impossible to film. It was too internal, too psychological. But what few people know is that King ultimately sold the rights to Darabont for just $1. Yes, you heard that right, $1 single. It was what King called his Dollar Baby program, where he would allow promising filmmakers to adapt his shorter works for a token payment. Tim Robbins revealed in a 25th anniversary interview that this gesture by King created an unusual freedom on set. We weren't making a big-budget blockbuster with studio executives hovering over every scene, Robbins explained. Frank had this remarkable creative control because, frankly, the stakes weren't seen as that high. Morgan Freeman added, "It's ironic. The film that would go on to be ranked #1 on IMDb for years started as almost an afterthought for Hollywood. Columbia Pictures barely knew what to do with it. This strange beginning set the stage for what would become one of Hollywood's most unlikely success stories. A film that took the roundabout path to greatness, much like its protagonist, Andy Dufresne. The prison that made Shawshank." One of the most crucial elements in creating the film's authentic atmosphere was the decision to shoot at the Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio. This massive, imposing structure had been closed in 1990 due to inhumane conditions, just 4 years before filming began. What the cast has revealed in subsequent interviews is how profoundly this real prison affected their performances. Clancy Brown, who played the brutal Captain Hadley, admitted, "There was something that happened to all of us when we walked through those gates each morning. You could feel the decades of misery in those walls. It wasn't something you had to act." The prison wasn't just a backdrop. It became a character in the film. Tim Robbins would sometimes sit alone in the cells between takes, absorbing the claustrophobic reality of incarceration. Those cells were tiny, 6 by 8 feet, Robbins noted in a 2019 interview. When you stood in one and the door closed, something primal happened in your brain. The panic was real. What fans may not realize is that many of the extras in the film were actually former inmates of that very prison. Director Frank Darabont wanted authentic reactions during the yard scenes and mess hall sequences, so he hired men who had actually served time there. Their weathered faces and knowing glances weren't acting. They were reliving their own experiences. This dedication to authenticity extended to every aspect of the production. The production team even aged the walls of the prison differently for scenes set in different decades, gradually making them cleaner as the film moved backward in time, a subtle detail most viewers never consciously notice. Freeman later remarked that this attention to reality changed his approach to Red. "I wasn't playing a prisoner in a movie set. I was playing a man who had spent decades in that specific hellhole. There's a difference." The characters behind the characters. What many viewers don't realize is that each of the main actors developed extensive backstories for their characters, details never explicitly mentioned in the film, but which informed every gesture, every line reading. Morgan Freeman revealed that he created an entire criminal history for Red that went far beyond the film's brief mention of his murder conviction. "In my mind, Red was a man who ran numbers in the black community, probably in the late 30s or early 40s. He was someone who had power on the outside and lost it all. That's why he's so good at getting things inside. He was always a fixer, always knew who to talk to, and how to make things happen. This background explained Red's unique position in Shawshank and his immediate recognition of something different in Andy Dufresne. Red sees Andy and thinks, here's another man who had position and lost it all. There's a recognition there. Tim Robbins took an even more unusual approach to building Andy Dufresne. I actually created two separate characters, Robbins explained in a director's commentary. There was the Andy that everyone at Shawshank saw, careful, methodical, somewhat aloof. And then there was the real Andy, the one we only get glimpses of, the one digging through the wall at night. This dual personality informed Robbins' performance in subtle ways most viewers never consciously register. When Andy is in his public persona, Robbins kept his body stiff, his gestures minimal. But in private moments, like when he plays the opera music over the prison speakers, his body language becomes more fluid, more natural. It's a shift so subtle that most viewers feel it without seeing it. Perhaps most fascinating is James Whitmore's approach to playing Brooks Hatlin, the elderly librarian whose inability to adjust to outside life leads to his suicide. Whitmore revealed that he based the character on his own father, who had suffered from depression in his later years. The scene where Brooks feeds the birds wasn't in the original script, Whitmore noted. I suggested it because my father used to do that in the park after my mother died. There was such profound loneliness in that simple act. This personal connection gave Brooks's brief but crucial storyline an emotional depth that resonates far beyond its screen time. It's just one example of how the actors infused their characters with pieces of real life that transformed Shawshank from a prison drama into something far more human. The hidden meanings most fans never catch. The Shawshank Redemption is layered with symbolism that most viewers, even devoted fans, completely miss on their first several viewings. The cast has revealed some of these hidden meanings in interviews over the years, transforming how we understand key scenes. Tim Robbins pointed out a pattern throughout the film that virtually no one notices on first viewing. Andy is frequently framed behind bars or through barriers in shots where other characters aren't. Even in scenes outside his cell, Frank would position me behind staircase railings or fences. It's a visual reminder that Andy feels imprisoned in ways others don't, by his innocence, by his former life, by his secret plans. This visual motif appears dozens of times throughout the film, but registers only subconsciously for most viewers. When you rewatch with this knowledge, it transforms your understanding of how tightly Andy is caged compared to the other inmates who have accepted their fate. Morgan Freeman revealed another layer of meaning in the film's famous roof tarring scene, where the prisoners get to work outside and drink beer in the sunshine. That scene isn't just about a moment of freedom, Freeman explained. If you pay attention, it's when Andy first begins to help the guards with financial matters. It's the beginning of his alternate identity as the prison's financial wizard. While everyone else sees a man getting them beer, Red sees Andy building his escape, piece by piece. What's fascinating is how this scene subtly foreshadows Andy's escape. He's literally on the roof, above the prison, creating the identity that will eventually allow him to break free. The beer, which seems like just a momentary pleasure, is actually the first step in a decades-long plan. Even the film's most iconic line contains depths most viewers miss. When Red says, "Get busy living," or "Get busy dying," it's not just a memorable quote, it's the thematic core of the entire film. Clancy Brown revealed that Darabont had the line written on the production office wall before filming even began. Frank told us that every scene, every character decision, needed to reflect that choice. Are they choosing life or death, hope or despair? With this understanding, seemingly small moments take on profound significance. When Andy plays the opera music over the prison speakers, he's choosing life. When Brooks carves "Brooks was here" before his suicide, he's choosing death. The entire film becomes a meditation on this fundamental human choice. The Rita Hayworth poster, more than meets the eye. Perhaps no element of the Shawshank Redemption is more iconic than the movie posters that adorn Andy's cell wall. First Rita Hayworth, then Marilyn Monroe, and finally Raquel Welch. But Tim Robbins revealed that these aren't just decorations or tools to hide his escape tunnel. They're a commentary on Andy's journey. The posters tell Andy's story, Robbins explained. Rita Hayworth represents the 1940s and 50s when Andy first arrives, a classic beauty from a more innocent time. Marilyn Monroe represents the next era, the late 50s and early 60s, more sexual, more complex. And finally, Raquel Welch in 1,000,000 years BC represents the primal, the elemental. She's literally dressed as a cave woman. It's Andy stripping away civilization, preparing to crawl through shit to come out clean on the other side. Director Frank Darabont confirmed this interpretation, adding, "The posters show a progression toward freedom. Rita is fully clothed, Marilyn is more revealing, and Raquel is nearly naked. It's Andy shedding the constraints of society as he prepares for his rebirth." This carefully planned progression gives new meaning to the famous shot of the poster flapping in the wind after Andy's escape. It's not just revealing his escape route, it's the final shedding of his former identity, the last layer between imprisonment and freedom. The weather is storytelling. One of the most subtle yet effective techniques in The Shawshank Redemption is how the film uses weather to tell its story. Morgan Freeman pointed this out years after release. Notice how it's always raining when bad things happen at Shawshank. The night the sisters first attack Andy, the night the warden commits suicide, the night Tommy is killed. In contrast, Andy's escape takes place during a thunderstorm, nature at its most violent and dramatic, matching the tension of his breakout. But most significantly, when Red finds Andy at the beach in Mexico, we see bright, clear sunshine for the first time in the entire film. That final scene is the only one in the movie with genuinely beautiful weather, noted Freeman. Every other outdoor scene has clouds, rain, or a gray cast to it. The sun doesn't truly shine until the very end. This visual storytelling technique works so subtly that most viewers never consciously notice it, yet it affects the emotional tenor of every scene. The prison exists in a perpetual state of gloom, while freedom, true freedom, is bathed in sunlight. The shocking truth about the famous "get busy living" scene. For many fans, the moment Red finally decides to go to Mexico, narrating "get busy living" or "get busy dying," that's goddamn right, represents the emotional climax of the film. What few people know is that this scene wasn't in the original script. Morgan Freeman revealed this surprising fact in a 2014 interview. That scene where Red decides to go to Mexico, where he finally chooses hope, that was added very late in production. Frank had finished the film, but something felt missing. The studio wanted to cut the reunion in Mexico entirely because they thought the film was too long. Frank fought back by adding that scene on the bus where I decide to go find Andy. This last-minute addition fundamentally changed the film's meaning. Without it, Red's journey would have ended with him simply being released from prison, a more ambiguous conclusion that wouldn't have completed his character arc. The film isn't just about Andy's escape, Freeman noted. It's about Red's escape too. Not from prison, but from the prison of his own mind. That scene makes it clear that Red has finally embraced hope after decades of suppressing it. This revelation transforms how we understand the film's structure. It's not just Andy's story with Red as narrator, it's a dual journey of two men finding freedom in very different ways. The Brooks subplot, a last-minute addition that changed everything. One of the most heartbreaking storylines in The Shawshank Redemption follows Brooks Hatlin, the elderly prisoner who, upon release, finds himself unable to adjust to the outside world and ultimately takes his own life. What many viewers don't know is that this pivotal subplot was significantly expanded from Stephen King's original novella. James Whitmore, who played Brooks, shared that the character was little more than a footnote in the source material. Frank saw something in this minor character that no one else did, Whitmore explained. He understood that Brooks represented all the men who become institutionalized, who can't live beyond the walls once those walls have become home. The decision to expand Brooks' role fundamentally changed the film's emotional landscape. It established the stakes for Red's eventual release and created a devastating counterpoint to Andy's steadfast hope. Without Brooks, the ending would lose much of its emotional impact. We wouldn't understand just how remarkable it is that Red chooses a different path. Director Frank Darabont later revealed that studio executives pushed to cut the Brooks sequence entirely, arguing that it slowed the main story. "I had to fight for Brooks," Darabont said. "I explained that without showing what happens to him, Red's final journey means nothing. Brooks chose fear, Red chooses hope. Without one, the other has no meaning." This context makes Brooks's famous carving, "Brooks was here," even more poignant. When Red later adds, "so was Red" before departing for Mexico, he's not just leaving a message, he's explicitly rejecting Brooks' fate and choosing a different ending for himself. The Warden, based on a real person. Bob Gunton, who played the villainous Warden Norton, revealed years after the film's release that his character was partially based on a real-life prison official from the 1950s who was eventually convicted of forcing inmates to perform renovation work on his personal home. Frank gave me newspaper clippings about this warden from the Midwest, Gunton explained. The man presented himself as a moral, upstanding Christian, while simultaneously treating prisoners like personal slaves and embezzling funds. The hypocrisy was staggering. This real-life inspiration informed many of the character's most memorable traits, his Bible quotations juxtaposed with his cruelty, his obsessive concern with appearance versus his moral corruption. Understanding this background gives new meaning to the warden's suicide scene. When the police arrive, he can't face the humiliation of being treated like the criminals he's lorded over for decades, Gunton noted. It's not just fear of prison, it's the destruction of his carefully constructed self-image as a righteous man that he can't bear. This character detail adds historical authenticity to what might otherwise seem like an over-the-top villain. The corrupt Bible-quoting warden wasn't Hollywood invention, he was drawn from America's actual penal history. The redemption in Shawshank, not what you think. While most viewers assume the redemption in the film's title refers to Andy's eventual escape and vindication, the cast has revealed a much more nuanced interpretation. Tim Robbins explained, "The title isn't just about Andy being redeemed through his escape, it's about the redemption of humanity inside a place designed to strip humanity away. Andy redeems the other prisoners by giving them hope and purpose. He redeems the library, the roof, even the walls of his cell through his carvings. He makes Shawshank itself better, even as he's planning to leave it." This understanding transforms the film from a simple escape story into something far more profound, a meditation on how humans can maintain their essential dignity even in the most degrading circumstances. Morgan Freeman added his own interpretation. Red finds redemption not just by leaving Shawshank, but by finally telling the truth, to himself and to the parole board. When he says he doesn't give a damn about their judgment of him, that's his redemption. He's finally authentic after decades of saying what he thought they wanted to hear. This layered understanding of redemption helps explain why the film has resonated so deeply with audiences. It's not just a prison escape thriller. It's a story about redeeming the human spirit in all the different ways that spirit can be imprisoned, by walls, by lies, by fear, and ultimately by the absence of hope. The famous ending, almost completely different. Perhaps the most shocking revelation from the cast and crew is that the Shawshank Redemption almost had an entirely different ending. The iconic beach reunion between Andy and Red, consistently ranked as one of the most uplifting conclusions in film history, was nearly left on the cutting room floor. Frank Darabont revealed that studio executives strongly pushed to end the film with Red on the bus, heading toward the Mexican border. They argued that actually showing the reunion was unnecessary and that the film was already too long. They wanted to cut the beach scene entirely, Darabont explained. They thought ending with Red on the bus, full of hope, was enough. But I fought for that final scene because the film isn't ultimately about hope. It's about hope fulfilled. Without seeing Andy and Red together on that beach, the audience would be left with the same uncertainty that plagues Red throughout the film. I wanted to give them closure. Tim Robbins added another fascinating detail. The final scene was actually the first thing we shot. Frank wanted to capture that reunion before Morgan and I had spent months building our relationship on screen. He wanted that slightly awkward, slightly tentative quality you see when two old friends reconnect after a long separation. This production decision created the perfect emotional tenor for the scene, neither overly sentimental nor lacking in genuine feeling. The subtle restraint in their reunion feels utterly authentic precisely because Robbins and Freeman hadn't yet developed the on-screen chemistry that would make their prison scenes so compelling. The executive's desire to cut this scene seems unfathomable now, given how perfectly it completes the story. As Morgan Freeman noted, without that beach scene, Shawshank would be a different film altogether. A film about hope as an idea rather than hope as a reality. And that's not nearly as powerful. The music, more than just a score. Thomas Newman's score for The Shawshank Redemption is almost as iconic as the film itself, but few viewers understand how deliberately the music was crafted to tell the story's emotional journey. The score actually gets more hopeful throughout the film, in such subtle ways that most viewers never consciously notice it, Tim Robbins revealed. Early prison scenes have this austere, almost mechanical quality to the music. By the end, there's warmth and even joy in the orchestration. This musical progression mirrors Andy's journey from despair to hope, but it happens so gradually that it registers emotionally rather than intellectually for most viewers. The music does what Andy does. It smuggles hope into Shawshank one note at a time. Perhaps the most powerful musical moment comes during the famous "Brooks Was Here" sequence, where the tender, melancholic score contrasts with the old man's isolation and fear. James Whitmore noted, "That music doesn't tell you how to feel about Brooks. It's not manipulative. Instead, it captures his profound confusion and sadness at finding himself free, but more imprisoned than ever." Newman's score was nominated for an Academy Award, but lost to Hans Zimmer's work on The Lion King. Many film scholars consider this one of the Oscars' most significant oversights, as Newman's subtle, emotionally complex composition stood the test of time as one of cinema's most effective scores. The film's second life, How Shawshank Became a Phenomenon. The Shawshank Redemption's box office performance was mediocre at best. Opening against Pulp Fiction and Forrest Gump, it earned just $16 million during its original theatrical run, far less than its $25 million production budget. By conventional Hollywood metrics, it was a failure. Morgan Freeman explained what happened next. The film found its audience through cable television and VHS rentals. TNT started showing it regularly, and something remarkable happened. People didn't just watch it once, they watched it every time it came on. It became comfort food for the soul. This unprecedented second life transformed Shawshank from box office disappointment to cultural touchstone. By the late 1990s, video rental revenue had not only made the film profitable, but had established it as one of the most beloved movies of all time. Tim Robbins noted the irony in this trajectory. A film about patience, about taking the long view, needed patience from the studio and the long view of history to be recognized for what it was. There's something appropriate about that. The film's journey from failure to phenomenon mirrors Andy's own journey. Initial setbacks, followed by quiet, persistent triumph. As Robbins put it, Andy spent decades tunneling through his wall with a rock hammer. Shawshank spent years tunneling into the public consciousness the same way. One viewing, one recommendation at a time. By 2019, the film had been at or near the top of IMDb's user-ranked list of greatest films for over a decade, outranking classics like The Godfather and Citizen Kane. What began as a commercial disappointment had achieved something far more significant than mere box office success. It had become part of America's cultural heritage. The Mansfield Prison Today, Shawshank Tourism. In a fascinating postscript to the film's legacy, the Ohio State Reformatory, where Shawshank was filmed, has been transformed from a decaying, abandoned prison to a major tourist attraction, drawing over 100,000 visitors annually. It's remarkable to think that a prison once known for its inhumane conditions is now preserved because of a film about the triumph of humanity, noted Tim Robbins. People come from all over the world to see where Andy and Red's story was told. Visitors can walk the same halls depicted in the film, see Andy's cell, and even examine the tunnel he used to escape, a Hollywood construction, but now a permanent installation. The prison's previous identity has been almost completely overshadowed by its role in cinema history. The local community in Mansfield, Ohio has embraced this legacy, creating a Shawshank Trail that includes over a dozen filming locations throughout the region. The economic impact has been substantial, with tourism revenue revitalizing an area that suffered from industrial decline. This transformation, from place of punishment to site of pilgrimage, represents yet another layer of redemption. A prison once designed to break the human spirit now celebrates a story about that spirit's irrepressible nature. The legacy, why Shawshank endures. As The Shawshank Redemption approaches its 30th anniversary, the question arises, why has this particular film maintained such a powerful hold on audiences when other critical darlings have faded from memory? Morgan Freeman offered perhaps the most insightful explanation. Shawshank speaks to something universal, the part of us that feels imprisoned by circumstances, by mistakes, by regrets. And it offers the promise that with enough patience and hope, we can escape those prisons of our own making. Tim Robbins added, the film doesn't preach. It doesn't tell you that hope is important. It shows you through Andy's journey, and it acknowledges how hard hope is to maintain. That's why Red's line about hope being a dangerous thing resonates so deeply. The film understands that hope isn't easy, it's necessary but terrifying. This nuanced portrayal of hope as both salvation and risk elevates Shawshank above simple inspirational storytelling. It acknowledges the full complexity of the human condition, while ultimately affirming our capacity for regeneration and connection. Director Frank Darabont summarized the film's enduring appeal. Shawshank is about what can't be taken from us: our essential humanity, our ability to form bonds of friendship, our capacity to find meaning even in the darkest circumstances. As long as people feel constrained by their lives, this story will resonate. In a world where commercial entertainment often seems disposable, Shawshank Redemption stands as a reminder that sometimes the stories that find the deepest place in our hearts are the ones that take the longest to be fully recognized. Like Andy Dufresne himself, the film's greatness wasn't immediately apparent. It revealed itself slowly, patiently, one viewer at a time. The Shawshank Redemption reminds us why we fall in love with movies in the first place. It's not just entertainment, it's a mirror that reflects our deepest struggles and highest aspirations. Through the revelations of its cast and crew, we can appreciate the extraordinary craftsmanship that went into creating this modern masterpiece. From the real prison that housed its production, to the carefully designed character journeys, from the subtle musical progression to the symbolic visual language, every aspect of Shawshank was crafted with remarkable intention. Yet it never feels constructed, it feels discovered, as though Darabont and his team didn't create this story so much as uncover it. Perhaps that's why the film has maintained such power over audiences for nearly 3 decades. It doesn't feel like a movie, it feels like truth dressed in the clothes of fiction. As Andy tells Red, remember, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. If you've enjoyed these insights into the Shawshank Redemption, I invite you to experience the film again with fresh eyes. Look for the visual patterns we've discussed, listen for the musical progression, notice how the weather reflects the emotional journey. Pay attention to Brooks's story and how it sets up Red's ultimate choice. Most importantly, share this film with someone who hasn't seen it. There's something magical about watching someone experience Shawshank for the first time, witnessing their discovery of a story that has touched so many lives. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into cinema's greatest treasures. Hit the notification bell so you never miss our uploads. And leave a comment below telling us what you think is the most powerful moment in the Shawshank Redemption. Until next time, remember, get busy living or get busy dying. That's goddamn right.